Every nation makes the best move for itself. But when everyone plays it smart, the whole world falls apart. July 1914. Europe. Millions of soldiers are on trains, heading for the border. The weird part, none of the kings actually wanted to fight. But 20 million people died anyway. If no one wanted it, why did it happen? You think war starts with hate. You think it takes a villain to pull the trigger. But World War I wasn't about a person. It was about a system. A system is a machine without a brake. Once you turn the key, the gears start to turn. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't care about your intentions. The leaders weren't the pilots. They were the passengers. They made perfect sense on paper, but they led to a total wreck in reality. You think this is history, but the machine never stopped. The gears are still turning. The scariest war isn't the one people want to fight. It's the one we don't know how to stop. You think this is just ancient history. It's not. The machine didn't disappear. It just upgraded. Steam turns into jet fuel. Rail schedules turned into strike windows. A century later, the same system is still setting our alarm. June 2025. 7 B-2 stealth bombers lift off from Missouri. They cross the ocean and drop 14 bunker busters over Iran. The target, nuclear facilities buried deep in the earth. February 2026. The second wave hits. Was this a deliberate choice? Or was it an inevitable trap? 110 years ago, Europe asked the same question. The answer is haunting. In a way, they were forced, not by a villain's threat, but by the systems they built themselves. The greatest danger isn't a madman with a fuse. It's a genius with a train timetable. Once the gears are in motion, the tragedy is already on schedule. June 28, 1914. Sarajevo. A tiny mistake. A wrong turn. The driver brakes. The car stalls. He stops exactly 2 meters from a 19-year-old assassin. 2 shots. But those bullets didn't have the power to kill 20 million people. They didn't start the fire. They just pressed a button that was already live. We're told the world went to war because of anger, because of revenge. That story is almost entirely wrong. Look at the leaders. They weren't enemies. They were cousins. The Kaiser of Germany, the Tsar of Russia, the King of England, all grandsons of the same queen. Wilhelm and Nicholas called each other Willie and Nicky. They wrote letters in English like old friends. After the shots were fired, they traded dozens of telegrams. Willie wanted peace. Nicky wanted to stop the clock. Their messages were honest. Their anxiety was real. They didn't want a fight. They tried to kill the conflict. But the conflict killed the world. If the most powerful man on earth couldn't stop it, what was actually in control? Germany wasn't just a country. It was a target. France on the left, Russia on the right. Caught in the middle, they had one answer. The Schlieffen Plan. The goal, knock out France fast. Turn around. Fight Russia. The secret wasn't more guns. It was more time. Russia was massive, but Russia was slow. With bad drills and wastelands, it would take 6 weeks for their army to even show up. That was a window. Germany had 42 days to break a nation, or face a war on 2 fronts. To win this race, Germany turned the entire nation into a giant clock. Think of it like a massive Lego city on rails. Every train, every track, and every minute was mapped out in thick books of schedules. 11,000 trains rolling at once. 2 million soldiers moving in sync. Precision wasn't just a goal. It was the engine. But this perfect machine had a fatal flaw. The system was hardwired. In Germany, mobilization didn't mean get ready. It meant go. The tracks didn't lead to training camps. They led straight to the French border. As historian A.J.P. Taylor said, mobilization was war. The moment the wheels started turning, the diplomats stopped talking. You think the general started the war. Actually, the timetable did. The plan was so precise that it left no room for peace. A schedule designed to save the country ended up locking it into a disaster. You might ask, can't we just call it off? Picture this scene. 2 million men are at the stations. 11,000 trains are rolling on the tracks at the exact same minute. Every rail is a gear. Every switch is a lock. If one train stops, the whole chain snaps. Soldiers end up in the wrong town. Food arrives at an empty field. Ammo is on a train that already left. Stopping isn't hitting a pause button. It's a total system crash. The army doesn't just wait. It disintegrates. And while you stall, the others move. Russia is marching. France is advancing. This is the terror of the system. You can't go halfway. You either run the engine or you lose the war. Once you turn the key, the brakes are gone. Germany wasn't the only one in the trap. The whole map was a web of must-do moves. Look at Russia. They are the protectors. If they stay silent while Serbia burns, the Tsar loses his crown at home. But the moment they move a single soldier, they trip the German wire. Austria-Hungary had a choice: strike or fade. Crush the rebels now, or watch the empire rot from the inside. For them, peace wasn't just quiet. It was a slow death. Germany sees the clock. Russia's rails are getting faster every year. The 1914 report was a countdown. Fight today, you have a chance. Wait for tomorrow, it's already over. Every leader made the smart move. Every nation chose the rational path. But when everyone plays it safe for themselves, the collective result is a hell no one asked for. Here's the cold truth. If you hesitate, you are finished. War moves at the speed of steam. Diplomacy moves at the speed of talk. The British tried to call a meeting, but the window was already closing. Every time a diplomat sat down, a military engine started up. Diplomacy wasn't leading the way. It was a runner chasing a bullet. Now, look at the trap. For decades, Europe built a web of alliances. They called it insurance. They thought it was a safety net. But every contract had a hidden clause. In a crisis, your protection becomes your trigger. It's not a choice anymore. It's an automatic response. The chain reaction is mechanical. Austria declares war, so Russia must move. Russia moves, so Germany must strike. Germany hits France, so Britain joins the fight. The dominoes didn't just fall. They were pushed by a machine with no off switch. This is the ultimate irony of the system. The chains you forge to keep you safe are the same ones that lock the cage. You build the armor to protect yourself. But when the fire starts, the armor is what burns you alive. Now the breaking point, Berlin. The news arrives, Russia is coming. Moltke walks in with the paper. One signature to start the world on fire. But then, a wire from London drops. A lifeline. Keep out of France and we stay neutral. The Kaiser lights up. Turn the trains around. Send everything to the east. Moltke stands frozen. His face is ghost white. He's not thinking about strategy. He's thinking about the clock. Millions of soldiers are already on the platforms. Dozens of trains are sliding onto the tracks. We can't stop it, he tells the Kaiser. If we change the route now, the army collapses. It becomes a mess of hungry men trapped on dead rails. The machine has no reverse gear. The Kaiser looks at him with cold contempt. Your uncle would have given me a different answer. But the trains keep rolling west. The Kaiser stays silent. Here is a twist that chokes the heart. Years later, the man who actually managed the tracks hears the story. General Staub. He opens his records. He checks the charts. He writes a book with one simple message. I could have done it. 10 days. 4 armies. Swung from west to east. He had a mess. He had the power. But Moltke never asked. Maybe he was too rigid. Maybe he was too scared. In that high-pressure room, he said impossible, because he assumed it was true. The unstoppable system was actually flexible. The physical limit was a mental wall. This is the scariest part of the story. History didn't end because of a gear that wouldn't turn. It ended because no one in the room said, "Wait, let's check one more time." Late July. The wires are buzzing between Berlin and St. Petersburg. It starts with a plea for help. It ends with a notice of war. Willie and Nicky, 2 cousins, 2 friends. The letters shift from "your sincere friend" to "I am forced." Nicky sends the final line. Technically, it is impossible to stop. Willie strikes back. Then I must mobilize my own. They didn't want the fight. They didn't hate each other. But they both knelt before the same God. The technicality. They told the world they were emperors. But in the moment of truth, they were just passengers. They didn't sign a declaration of hate. They signed a confession of helplessness. 2 signatures. Millions of lives. The cousins said goodbye. And the world said goodbye to peace. June 20-25. 7 B-2 stealth bombers rise from Missouri. 14 bunker busters drop over Iran, targeting the deep, striking the dark. By February 2026, the scale grows. The targets are no longer just machines. They are the men in power. You think this is a war about nuclear threats. It's actually a war about the clock. The US strategy lives on a line called breakout time. It's the distance between raw material and the finished bomb. A distance measured in weeks. Before the strike, reports showed Iran had enough fuel for 10 warheads. They were 1 week away from the finish line. This is the ghost of 1914 Germany. The window is closing. The door is locking. If we don't hit today, we won't be able to hit tomorrow. But the first strike does something the bombs can't. It kills the talking. Negotiations end. Inspectors leave. When diplomacy vanishes, the next strike isn't a choice. It's a sequence. The system isn't being driven. It's just rolling downhill. Here is the unsettling reality. US intelligence knew Iran wasn't actually building a bomb. They said it publicly. But the bombs fell anyway. Just like 1914. Austria-Hungary knew their terms were accepted. But the march continued. The system doesn't need a perfect reason. It just needs a trigger to pull. Then comes the pressure from Israel. To them, a nuclear Iran isn't a risk. It's an ending. They told Washington, let the strike or watch us burn the house down. This is the sandwich trap. If Israel starts a fire alone, the US gets burned by the chaos. If the US leads a fire, they think they can control the heat. Attacking first looks like the only rational move left. It's the same logic that started a world war a century ago. The reasons for the war are just the script. The timetable is the director. The war doesn't happen because someone chose it. It happens because the clock wouldn't stop. August 1914. Kaiser Wilhelm II stands on the palace balcony. He looks at the cheering masses in Berlin. I no longer recognize parties. he yells. I only recognize Germans. The crowd erupts. But hours before the roar, the room was silent. The Kaiser looked at General Moltke. Your uncle, he said, would have given me a different answer. He knew the truth. The trains had already left. The tracks were already set. He wasn't the driver of the machine. He was just a passenger in the front seat. He couldn't stop the momentum. He could only wear the uniform. February 2026. After this trek, a US official stands before a wall of cameras. We had no choice, he says. 110 years have passed. The iron tracks have turned into flight paths. The cold smoke has turned into jet exhaust. But the timetable never left. You think leaders make history. Actually, the schedule makes a leader. The train looks different. The timing is exactly the same.